It started like any other afternoon on campus, students heading to class, music playing from nearby dorms, and the usual buzz of college life. But things took a sharp turn when two local cops approached a student just outside the student center. At first, it seemed like a routine conversation, maybe a misunderstanding, maybe a mistaken identity, but within minutes, the tone shifted. Voices got louder, tension built. The officers started throwing their weight around, questioning the student like he was already guilty of something serious. What they didn't know: that student had more discipline, training, and self-control than they could imagine. He wasn't just some random guy in a hoodie and backpack. He was a US Marine, a black belt in karate, someone trained to stay calm under pressure, no matter how intense things got. And while he stood there, surrounded by flashing lights and stares from passing students, he didn't react out of anger or fear. He waited, measured every move, and let the situation play out, until things nearly spiraled out of control. What pushed the officers to act the way they did? And how did the student manage to keep everything from escalating into something far worse? The moment of truth was just seconds away, and no one saw it coming. His name was Marcus, a quiet senior majoring in criminal justice with a reputation for keeping to himself and staying focused on his studies. Most of the students who passed by him every day didn't know much about his past. They didn't know that before college, Marcus had served overseas as a Marine, or that he'd spent nearly a decade training in martial arts. To them, he was just another guy in a hoodie, earbuds in, minding his own business. But that day, something about him seemed to trigger suspicion. Maybe it was the backpack. Maybe it was the way he looked around before crossing the quad. Whatever it was, the officers didn't ask questions. They just made assumptions. They claimed he matched the description of someone involved in a nearby incident, though they never shared much detail. Marcus calmly asked what was going on, but instead of answers, he got more pressure, more attitude. The situation got tense quickly. One of the officers rested his hand on his belt. The other started circling behind Marcus, like they were preparing for something. People nearby slowed down, sensing something was off. Some pulled out their phones. Marcus noticed everything, but didn't flinch. He'd seen worse. Much worse. But even with his training, he knew one wrong move could change everything in an instant. Marcus kept his hands visible, his voice steady. "I'm just heading to class," he said, hoping that staying calm would help diffuse whatever this was. But the officers didn't back off. One asked him to empty his pockets. The other told him to put his bag down. Around them, students started whispering, some filming with their phones, others unsure whether they should intervene or stay out of it. What the cops didn't realize was that this wasn't Marcus's first time being profiled. It wasn't even the second. But this one felt different. It wasn't just aggressive. It felt like they were looking for a reason to escalate. And Marcus knew how quickly these situations could spiral, especially when people didn't know who they were dealing with. Meanwhile, across campus, a professor named Dr. Saunders had just finished reviewing Marcus's recent assignment, an essay about justice and accountability in law enforcement. It was sharp, personal, and brutally honest. She knew Marcus had a story behind those words, but she had no idea he was living part of it in real time. Back at the scene, one officer started asking about Marcus's ID. He had it, of course, but something in their tone said it might not matter. The crowd was growing. The phones were still recording, and Marcus could feel the weight of the moment pressing in on all sides. Marcus reached slowly into his jacket and pulled out his student ID, keeping his movements deliberate and non-threatening. He handed it over, making direct eye contact, saying nothing. The officer glanced at it, then back at him, clearly looking for something, anything, to justify what was unfolding. The second officer hovered close, still watching Marcus's hands like he was expecting trouble. The silence around them grew heavier. No sirens, no shouting, just quiet tension and the soft buzz of notifications from students' phones. Some were live streaming. Others just stood frozen, unsure if they were watching something harmless or something about to go very wrong. Marcus's phone buzzed in his pocket. He didn't reach for it. He knew better. But across campus, Dr. Sanders had just seen the footage a student posted online. The title caught her eye. Asterisk college student harassed by cops on campus asterisk. Her heart sank. She tapped the video open and saw Marcus standing still, calm, surrounded. Back on the quad, one of the officers stepped in closer. "You sure you don't have anything on you we should know about?" he asked, his tone sharper now, more pointed. Marcus kept his voice even. "No, sir, nothing illegal. You're welcome to check." The officer didn't like the confidence. It wasn't defiance, but it wasn't fear either. And in that moment, something shifted. The officer's expression hardened, as if Marcus's calm was somehow a challenge. Without warning, he motioned for Marcus to turn around. "We're going to need to search your bag," he said. Marcus hesitated, not because he had anything to hide, but because he knew his rights, and he knew this was starting to cross a line. "Am I being detained?" he asked, his voice still steady, but louder now. Students nearby caught it. A few took a step closer. That question, those 5 words, changed the mood instantly. The officer paused, not expecting Marcus to push back legally. The second officer moved in, clearly agitated now. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," he warned, hand once again hovering near his belt. Then came the twist no one saw coming. From across the quad, another voice cut through the noise. "Officers, that's enough." A third figure stepped forward, badge out, plain clothes. Campus security, but not just any guard. It was Lieutenant Harass, a former Marine himself, now working at the university. He'd seen the crowd, the phones, the tension, and then he saw Marcus. His eyes narrowed as he approached. "You two know who you're talking to?" he asked, glancing at Marcus with a nod of recognition. The 2 officers didn't answer. The energy shifted again, but this time no one knew which direction it would go. Lieutenant Harass stepped between Marcus and the officers, his tone calm but firm. "This student is a Marine veteran, decorated, disciplined, and unless you have probable cause, this ends now." The officers glanced at each other, suddenly less sure. The crowd was larger. Phones were everywhere, and someone from the university was now officially involved. One of the officers muttered something under his breath, but the tension had already begun to crack. Marcus stayed quiet, letting Harass do the talking. For the first time since it started, he felt like someone actually saw him. Not just the backpack, the hoodie, or the silence, but the full story. After a pause, the officers backed off. "You're free to go," one of them said quickly, trying to move on. Harass turned to Marcus. "You good?" Marcus nodded, though his jaw was tight. The crowd slowly dispersed, whispering, posting, sharing what they'd just witnessed. But just as Marcus turned to walk away, Harass added, "By the way, you still training? I saw your name at the Martial Arts Center last week." Marcus gave a small smile. "Every week keeps me sharp." That's when the final twist dropped. Later that evening, one of the videos from the incident went viral, not just because of the confrontation, but because someone in the background caught audio of the officers before approaching Marcus. What they said revealed this wasn't a random stop at all. Someone had called in a false report, someone who knew who Marcus was and didn't like it. In the days that followed, the video gained traction across social media, sparking conversations about profiling, power dynamics, and the quiet strength people carry beneath the surface. The university launched an internal review, and it didn't take long to trace the false report back to a student who had a long-standing grudge against Marcus, someone he had bested in a martial arts competition months earlier. The truth was petty, but the consequences were serious. Marcus didn't press charges. He said he just wanted to move forward, but his story sparked something bigger. Dr. Sanders invited him to speak in her class about his experiences, both in service and on campus. He didn't dramatize anything. He just told the truth, and that truth resonated with students and faculty alike. As for Marcus, he kept his routine. Morning workouts, classes, karate training, nothing flashy, just quiet discipline. But now people looked at him a little differently, not with fear, but with respect. In the end, Marcus reminded everyone of a simple truth. Not all heroes wear uniforms on campus. Some just walk quietly, focused, with a story you wouldn't believe until you see it unfold right in front of you.